Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of the Indie Allies podcast. My name is DarkslayerTV, or Brandon Winkler, and I am joined, as always, with my lovely host, Hal. How are we doing today, Hal?
I am doing really good. Thank you so much for having me back.
Of course, you are the co-host. You are going to be back every single time, unless, of course, we have some amazing guests and you just can't make it or something. Because I would hate to have like an amazing guest and then it's like something comes up and it's like, well, sorry. But yeah. However, we are
Hey, and
joined. Oh,
we have
sorry. Go ahead.
video too.
Oh, yeah. I should probably bring attention to the fact that you are also looking at a visual representation of the podcast if you're on a YouTube or Twitch, because we're going to be streaming these live as well. The VOD, Darkslayer TV, the actual stream is going to be on Twitch TV, Darkslayer TV. And then, of course, all those million places that you can listen to it with with just audio. I don't even know half of them. Like Amazon Music, I know we got Apple Podcast, I think is what it's called, Spotify. I don't even know what that orange one is, but it's on there. We got Google, iHeartRadio, RP. Literally everything I could get this on, it's on now. So hopefully your choice is on there. But we have an even more special guest than the both of us. We have the one, the only VTuber, and my wife, Natbakka. How are we doing today, Nat?
Hi. We're here. We're here. About as good as it's getting.
Indie Allies podcast. You hear that, guys? As good as it's getting. When you're here, it's as good as it gets. I don't know if that's a good thing now that I think about it. Like, I had a lot of aspirations in life, but if this is as good as it gets, I'm a little disappointed.
It's all downhill from here.
Oh God.
Have no faith in yourselves.
So the reason we have Nat on is actually because one, we want to start having guests, of course, but two, you are a brand new game developer. How long have you been doing it? Out of curiosity, would you say?
Technically it's been about a year, but since I started heavily doing it and really focusing on it, it's been maybe 4 or 5 months.
Yeah. So not very long at all. And I mean, for any of those that have actually taken that dive into the game developer pool, they know that 45 months, and this scares some people off, but the truth is it's not that much. Like, you learn a lot in that time, but I mean, how long have you been doing it?
Like 14 months now.
And would you say that you're like not a beginner?
I feel very much like a beginner.
Yeah. So Nat definitely gonna give us some interesting perspective today on some of the different topics we have coming up. So look out for that. However, I think one of my favorite parts of the podcast where we talk about the things we did this week. I'm gonna give it to Hal first. You've been chosen. What have you been up to this week, Hal?
Um, it's actually been kind of a frustrating week for me. I have been, and I'm sure a lot of people can sympathize with this, but I have really been kind of just going in circles with some stuff. Um, I've been struggling trying to figure out procedural animations, and they're really cool, and I really want to use them, but I just don't think that I can get it all integrated into all of the other stuff that I'm using. And it's like I figure out how to, and I know this is just like this is very common in game development, but I figure out how to make one thing work, and then that like breaks two other things. And so
Mhm.
it's been really frustrating, to be honest, because I've kind of been just like going back and forth on so many things, and it's been one of those things to where I feel like I've gotten nothing done basically in the past week, and that's really frustrating because I want to get stuff done. But Yeah. I mean, I guess, the other way to look at it is like I have learned a lot, but I just haven't been able to use anything that I've learned, which has been kind of annoying.
Yeah, I think I go through that almost every single week where I have a lot I want to do and I know all of the big scope ideas that I'm working on. So I'll be working on them, but because they're so large scope, you know what it is? It's that middle part of a project. That feeling where you're not at the inspirational, holy crap, I'm about to tackle this moment, but you're also not at the end where you're like, oh, there's the finished product. So you're
Yeah.
trudging through the middle of it and it's like, what am I doing? It feels like
Yeah.
nothing's happening. Like, yeah, things are happening, but it definitely doesn't feel like it.
And I think this is probably where a lot of people get to and then they just give up. I think that so many people like, you start out and like you're so excited to make a game and you have all these ideas and you think that you have it all planned out and everything, but then you start to hit roadblocks and it gets hard. And like this is really hard stuff. I mean, it's probably not hard for some people, but it's hard for me. And like I'm not gonna lie, there's been times where I just want to like give up or take a break, and do something else. But I'm so dedicated to finishing this game and getting it out there that that's not gonna stop me. But it's still frustrating.
You know, I was listening to believe it or not, the Smosh podcast, and they said something super relevant about this recently. They were talking about one of their passion projects, and basically something that they had mentioned was whenever you make stuff like this, or like you're an artist or someone that just is really, creative in general, it's something that burns inside you. It's not something that you tell yourself, okay, I have to work on this, so I guess I'll do it. I mean, I'm sure there's some of that, but whenever you are a creative person and you have one of these ideas, it's very much, it has to come out or you're going to lose your mind. And that's what gets you in there working, especially like those long hours or like not taking breaks when you're supposed to, because you just have this creative drive in you and you've got to get it out, especially when you get those good ideas that like you're really, what's the word I'm looking for? You're just really excited to get it out. I can't think of a better way to put it, but
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's um, I don't know. It's something that I feel like when you hear people when they're first or when they're trying to like give you advice for making a game, not to go too big with the scope. And I feel like everyone always goes too big with their first with the scope of their game. I
it's
definitely
almost not their
did.
fault though, because
Yeah,
it's like
it's
it's
like
one of
you
those
just don't
things where you
know.
just exactly. It's like whenever someone tells you to make a GDD for the first time, it's like I don't know what that is. It's like, well, I didn't
Yeah,
either. You just got to do it. Like you just got to look it up, try it, and then it's like you need to set deadlines for yourself. It's like, well, I don't know how long this takes. It's like I know, I don't either. You're just gonna
yeah,
have to put a deadline and adjust the schedule as needed. But it's still important to have those checkpoints and those things that are like, hey, but yeah, you're never gonna know the first time you do it, or the 10th time you do it. It's just something you got to do it anyway, and keep getting better at it, or at least try.
yeah, yeah. And the things that you think will take, like 2 hours end up taking 3 days sometimes.
Oh god, yes, especially whenever everything goes wrong. Oh, and you know what? You were talking about something earlier. I just so you know, I listened to our first episode multiple times because I wanted to take notes and make sure I keep improving as each episode happens. So I'm gonna be listening right now. Hi, me in the future. What's up? Uh, no, one of the notes I put was how you were talking about in game development. You want to add something to your sorry, there's a spam bot in my chat and it completely took
I
all
just
of my
saw
train
that.
of thought. Hold on, get out of here. We gotta ban him. Hold on, where is it? Where is it? No, there's a thing blocking the ban button. There we go. It's gone. Perfect. Anyway, back on track. You want to implement something like the procedural animation, um, but now nothing's gonna work unless you completely redo everything. And that happens so often in game development. I don't think people realize that sometimes you're so far down a development path that you might have a good idea that's like, oh, I should include this. And then you realize all of a sudden, if I want to include this, I'm basically starting over.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of my problems is, I mean, you know this, you know the system that we're working with in the inventory system, and
Right.
you know how convoluted it is.
Right.
Um, and like I've looked into other inventory systems, one in particular that is much more along the lines of kind of like what you're working with on some things, and I'm like, man, I really wish I was using this system. And then, I start to think like, should I just like wipe this out and go back and remake it with all of this? And that just kind of like keeps swirling in the back of my head. And yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you
I'm
just
gonna
have to
save it for the
balance
next
it.
game though.
Yeah, a lot of times that is the best idea. Is like, you know what, we're gonna keep trucking and we will get this out. Especially when you're not skilled at finishing a game, because I
Yeah.
don't think people also realize that finishing a game is a skill in its own. Like being
Yeah.
able to say, this is complete, these are the things that need to be finished, and this is like what the user experience is. It's ready. That is a completely different skill than just like working on a game.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
But hey, enough about me. What you been up to?
What have I been up to? I have been doing a lot of stuff this week. I went back, I got a little bit further on the save load system. Um, Almost finished, by the way. I think I said that last time, but that's how much work goes into it, is that like 2 weeks later, or I guess a week later, you're still almost finished. So very excited about that. But what put me behind a little bit this week, which I'm very excited about, is I am going to start mentoring people that want mentored. And I have my first mentee tomorrow. And they sent me a list of like all the stuff they want for their game. Which, by the way, speaking of the whole scope thing that you were saying, like on people's first projects, is this person went very hard with the list, and I'm glad they did, because I think it's something that everyone needs to realize. Like, I want you to express these feelings and be honest with yourself about what you want to make, because just because it is a high scope doesn't necessarily mean you won't make it. But at the same time, it is good to have these bumps where it's like someone stops you and goes, "Hey, listen, I see it. I know you're passionate. I know you want to do it, but now is not the time. Like, let's get something basic here, and then if it expands, great." But like, just as an example, the mentee, and I won't say their name. I don't know how comfortable they are with me, like, saying that, but they put like, how does open world work? They wanted, and then they started describing an inventory system, a mount system with a horse, and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, you want an open world RPG, and I'm gonna help. Like, I'm gonna come at this as a mentor should. I'm gonna say, look, let's start from the beginning. We need to get a foundation down. You need to have an understanding of how all the basics work going into this. Um, but at the same time, I am going to say, just so you know, you're looking at minimum a few years working on this before you even have anything worth showing, because of just how much you've got here. And we'll see if they listen, because I have a feeling it can go one of two ways. One, I feel like they'll listen to me and they'll be like, okay. Well, actually, I could see it going three ways, and one of them's I don't like. One of them is they say okay, and they listen to me, and great, rainbows and sunshine. They lower the scope. Two, they ignore me completely, which is also fine, because some people do need to learn that way. Like, it can be frustrating as a mentor, because I've taught so many people so many things. It's just a role that I fill. I love it. But sometimes my mentees have to hit the wall with their face. It's just the reality of it. Some people learn that way. Great. The way I hope it doesn't go is me saying that scares them off and they don't do anything. Because I have a
Yeah.
feeling some people will hear that and go, oh. And then it kind of crushes them, and then they have like those self-confidence issues, and then it just kind of is like, I'm good. And I don't want
Yeah.
that. I really don't, because I've seen it before, and there's nothing you can do. Because that person has to trust you on a very, not to sound weird, but almost like a really personal or like intimate level in order to like be able to actually get at their confidence and say, no, what's actually stopping you? Like, is it your self-worth or whatever? Sometimes people aren't willing to share that information, and ultimately those are the roadblocks. So as a mentor, you're just left with like, I wish you wouldn't have quit, but there's nothing I can do.
Yeah. I have a question for both of you guys. I'm not sure if you guys have played the game called The Exit 8. Do y'all even know what that is?
The Exit
I've
8.
seen it.
Hold on, let me Google
It's the
this.
one where you're walking around the hallways and you
Yes.
have to like keep an eye out for like
Yeah.
exchanges.
Yes.
I played this game uh last week, I think it was. And I I freaking loved this game. It is so short too. It's like you can finish it in like 15 minutes. But I went through for anybody that doesn't know what this game is, it's a loop game, I guess. It's very kind of unique. You are stuck in a an underground subway, and you have to figure out how to get out of it. And you go down the same hallway multiple times. And if you spot an anomaly, something weird, then you turn around and go back. If you don't spot an anomaly, you just go straight through. And you keep doing this until you get to the eighth exit. So, like, you go through one time and you see exit one, and then the next time, exit two. And if you mess something up, like if you don't see an anomaly and you go through, then it resets. So it's such a simple idea. And I was thinking about this the whole time that I played it, and I'm still kind of obsessed with this. Like, I want to just make this game. And I even like I streamed the game, and I even opened up Unreal Engine at the end. I was like, I think we could figure out how to do this.
Oh yeah, it'd be
um,
super easy. It's just
yeah,
it's that level instance 3 times in case they go forward or back, and then you
yeah,
have different actors that can be on or off, or the static mesh changes. It would be super simple, and I think that's one of the charms of that game. From a game dev perspective, is
yeah.
they killed when it comes to scope.
Yes.
They
So
killed it.
that's what I wanted to bring up, and that's what I wanted to mention. This was their first game. I have no idea like what their experience was with game development, but this is the kind of game that I think people should be thinking about for their first game. And I'm so mad that like I didn't think about this or something, so simple, um, because it's just such a beautiful, simple idea, and I just freaking loved it. And I just wanted to shout it out. And again, just kind of tie it back to this, discussion about scope and keeping it small for your first project. Like I literally think this could almost be like a game jam type game that you could make and do really well.
What is crazy is I love indie horror. I think you do as well. But
Hmm.
I almost get jealous. And maybe jealous is the wrong word, because maybe jealous is the right word. I don't know. Regardless, whenever a developer can be like, I have a house, and then they make like an hour-long game. I'm like, I can't. How? Like they'll be like, this is a part, but only because I have a house. I have this sequence where it's just like a dark area where you can only see the floor, so that way it's like an endlessly dark area. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
like, you are so creative in order to take such little assets and then say, here's my scope and I'm going to stick with it. Because you know what my first ever attempt at keeping my scope creep in check was? You should know how. It was the feedback.
Ah, okay.
And it you can see where I was definitely keeping it pretty
Yeah.
tame. But even then, like you look at, like you were saying, the Exit 8, there's no contest.
Yeah. It's fun. It's kind of getting off on a tangent, but I was even thinking about this game, the Exit 8, after I finished, and I was like, dang, this would be kind of a cool concept that like we could almost make the feedback into like for a side thing in terms of, the setting and everything. I was like, that could be a really fun idea for that.
That would be really fun. See,
I
but my
know.
brain immediately wants to like take it a step further, and that's the
Yeah.
problem.
I know.
But speaking of first games, speaking of scope, let's go
Nice
to
transition.
our expert on the matter, Natbakka. What have you been doing this week?
That is a very loaded question for me because I have been doing so much that my brain doesn't even comprehend what all I've done, and I sit there and my mind blanks out. Oh gosh, so many systems that I've not been prepared for or that I didn't think I would need that all of a sudden I need, and they're piling more and more on top of each other, and it's just becoming a whole lot.
Can you just give us like a brief idea of what your game is?
Do you know Vampire Survivors at all?
Yes.
So that kind of like a, enemy onslaught, survive as long as you can.
Yeah.
I wanted to go with a game like that because I thought it was simplistic enough, and here's the keyword thought. Uh, but
Speaking of
then I
scope, here
wanted
we
to
go
put my own
again.
twist. Yeah, scope. Yep. Uh, I wanted to put my twist on it, and because I grew up very passionate about music, I wanted to incorporate that into the game. So it's
Oh,
basically an
cool.
onslaught of these musical themed enemies, and you can play as a different instrumentalist, and your instrument has like a different attack based on like what it is and all that stuff.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
I hope to eventually be able to make it so that the music changes depending on what instrument you like click on and play as.
Hmm.
But again, scope.
Yeah. One thing that I'm learning to do is have stretch goals for things. So, like keeping a scope in check, I will often think of something that'd be like, oh, it'd be cool if I could do this. And instead of then just immediately doing that and spending the next 4 weeks working on this that may or may not even work out, I just write that down as a stretch goal. I'm like, okay, if I get things done that I need to get done, then I can look at that.
Fair, fair. It's one of those things where I don't think I'll be able to make the music myself, so I'm hoping that I can find someone who's willing to help me with it and work on it with me.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a side thing, but like at the moment, I'm just working on base systems that the game requires. Like not even like, oh, maybe I could add that. It's just all the basics, and it's so much.
Can you give us some examples? Like what systems have you been working on?
Um, I recently finished the communications between the sprite and the enemy, like the main character sprite and the enemies, so that the enemies die and then proceed to drop an EXP orb that can then be picked up, but I'm encountering a whole bunch of issues with that, so there's a lot of troubleshooting that needs to happen.
Yeah.
There's that, a basic HP system. You helped me out with the level system, actually, Dark. Yeah, those basics. Trying to figure out how to get the HUD to update with like what the HP look like bar and how much you have and what level you are. Basically, all of the bare minimum that you need for that type of game.
Right. What, out of curiosity, what do you think has been the hardest thing out of everything you've worked on so far? What one has been the hardest and why?
Uh,
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
so I could have multiple different answers for this in my eyes because to start, the hardest thing was to just start and
I,
figure out what I needed to do at the beginning.
I was
Uh,
hoping that was your answer, but keep going.
I was gonna say, if not, I think the hardest thing that I've had to do has been figuring out how to get things to communicate between each other. And even though I've had you to help me and a lot of other people to help me, I still get so lost in it. And I'm like, I just get so confused sometimes.
Yeah, No, I was hoping that'd be your answer because I think a lot of people, when it comes to any, like, being your own boss, I guess is a good way to put it, or doing like your own personal projects, I don't think people realize getting yourself to do it, especially when it's something big like game development where you're like, I already don't know how to do it, so that's like a part of the process. I don't think people realize like that's a lot more than just, oh, yo, I decided to be a game developer and now I am one. Like, dude, no. Like, I don't think I about said it again. I'm gonna try not to say that again. I was gonna say it like for the fourth time. Um, yeah, it's such a mental game. Game development outside of the code is very, very almost mental health levels of getting yourself to do things, getting yourself to not give up. Because I mean, if we went back to the beginning of this conversation, even, you know, as Hal was saying, oh no, my ADHD made me lose the thought. Um, someone save me. I don't.
Scope. Getting started.
Getting started. Oh god. Oh god.
You're asking other people with ADHD to help you out here.
That's a
It's not
good point,
working.
actually. No, as he was saying earlier. Oh, I was hoping if I was just confident with it, I'd remember. Regardless, it's a mental game. It really is. But yeah, okay, awesome. I will say something that's difficult whenever you are a mentor and someone that knows the Unreal Engine as well as I do is deciding how much to help your wife can be very, very difficult because at the end of the
Hmm.
day, and when she has issues and she's frustrated, like anybody would be, um, it's one of those things where it's like, I could just sit there and make the game, but that's not the point. So I really have to like figure out these lines where I'm like, yeah, you should try this. But on the inside, I'm like, that's not how I would do it. But like, you're trying to like motivate and cultivate what they're growing instead of like ripping it out and just doing it, whatever it is you would want to do. It's been quite the dance and process, I have to say.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, there's no reason to apologize. I just think it's an interesting thing that I've had to, like, never in my life that I think, man, I'm gonna have to develop the skill of what to teach my wife and what not to when it comes to game development. It's definitely not something that would be on my resume, but here we are.
Gotta make everything challenging.
All right. Anyway, going on to the next thing on the itinerary. This is where I think we're gonna have our first ever, not disagreement. I do think we're going to have differing opinions on this, and I think listeners are going to have very strong opinions on this. The game development news this week, I have a couple of specific articles here, but instead of referencing them specifically, I think it'd be better to just open the can of worms and have the conversation. And that is AI in game development. And I don't specifically mean like, you know, a game's AI for the enemies and stuff. I mean AI making art, AI making code for game development. Um, I think I'm going to hand this to, I was going to say Nat, but she hasn't had time to prepare. For those that don't know, by the way, Nat is here uh, as a rescue for us because we had to find a quick backup guest. So thank you, Nat, for that. But while she
No
has time
problem.
to think about that for now, Hal, would you like to go first? Because I know you've already got some strong opinions about this.
Boy, I'm glad we're not starting out with anything controversial. Um,
I would never do that. Do you think Taiwan should be part of China?
um, yeah, this is something that, man, I think about AI so much, and um, I still don't fully know where I stand on a lot of things. Um, I think that I've said this for a while that I am like 80% fascinated by AI and 20% absolutely terrified by it. And I actually I think that's changed a little bit. I think I'm more like maybe like 60-40 now. Like
Oh, you're going in the.
I'm getting more terrified of it.
I'm not gonna lie. I kind of thought it would be the other direction. Okay, so now I'm interested.
Yeah, I mean, like even outside of game development, I think my fears do maybe stem from a little bit more stuff like outside of game development. Just like I don't know. I'm just like I'm really worried that bad people are going to use this.
They are.
um, yeah, and anyway, I'll try to keep the conversation in the game development world. Um,
It's relevant though. I'm not against you going a little bit outside of it because I mean it's relevant.
yeah, and yeah. I really don't know where I stand on a lot of this stuff, and I think what it's fascinating to me. It really is like this whole thing, in my opinion. AI, and again, when I say AI, I think everyone knows this, but like when we say AI, what we're talking about is, the chat GPTs and the mid journeys and that kind of stuff right now. I think that this stuff is truly revolutionary in the same way that the internet was revolutionary when it came out, and in the same way that the camera was revolutionary when it was invented. And I think that there's a lot of people that are terrified of this. There's a lot of artists that are terrified of this. And I think rightfully so. Like it is scary because this new technology has come out kind of out of nowhere, and like it's going to replace jobs. I don't think there's any question about that. And so I guess the question that I think I've been wrestling with and I've been trying to think about is like, you know, this is going to disrupt not just our industry, but industries around the world. It already is doing that. And so I don't think there's any stopping it. And so I really, really believe that I myself and others need to do everything they can really to learn how to use these tools. And I say tools because I really do believe that they're tools to the best of our advantage. And I totally 100% sympathize with, especially the artists that are worried about these things taking over. And I think that that's a totally valid concern. I mean, I come from the photography world, where I've been a photographer for 13 years now, and like I can tell you, this has literally disrupted my industry, the photography industry as well. Like I used to do stock photography, and I still have some images up on like iStock photo and that kind of stuff. And a couple of years ago, I straight up got a message from one of them. I can't remember who it was, but they were like, "Oh, hey, we got a new AI, and like, oh, we're gonna train it on all of your images and all that stuff. So, thanks for that." I was like, "Okay, then, I guess maybe I should start getting out of photography." um, so like, yeah, this has straight up affected me. Um, we could have like a whole discussion on like the ethics of this. I think that Oh boy, I think that that is a huge discussion, and I think there's a lot of people that just immediately jump to the conclusion that like what all of these companies are doing is stealing. Um, I honestly don't know where I stand on that. Like, I think it's a very complicated thing, and it's not just something that you can just say that like they were 100% wrong and they 100% stole all of these images to train all their stuff on. At the same time, I think the problem is like we literally don't have laws for this kind of stuff. Like it's such a new technology that we've never created laws in terms of copyright, like how this stuff should work. because I think technically, like what I've looked into and what I've read about is, did they break copyright law on using images on the internet to train their AIs? And like, I don't know if the answer is really yes to that. I think that, I think again, I know a lot of people like jump to conclusions and just say like, yes, they did. They stole our photos and all of that stuff. And I don't know if it's really that simple. Again, like I don't know if ethically it was right to do, but anyway, I feel like I'm already going way farther than I I should on this discussion. I still find it absolutely fascinating, and I love this discussion. One of the things that I have been thinking a lot about is I've been thinking about like other technologies like this, and I thought a lot about um, like the painters in the 1800s when the camera was invented. Like they were probably it was probably a very similar situation, although it wasn't as quick moving back then. Obviously, these technologies are just so crazy fast now. The way that they're getting so better, so much better, so quickly. But painters and artists back then, like I can't imagine being a painter and this technology coming around and being like, "Oh yeah, we can now basically do what you did, but do it way better and 100% accurate." Like I'm sure that painters back then were like, "Well, dang, we're just out of the job." But here's my main point about this is I think that that was terrifying, but the main point is we didn't get rid of painters, and we still have painters, and we still appreciate paintings and art. And the camera, which was this technology that by all means is better than a painting, it didn't replace painters. And so I really want to tell artists that just because a technology is out that can do something as good as you, some people may argue that it's not as good, whatever. I'm not going to argue about that. I don't think that this just all of a sudden means that like, oh, I should just quit my job as a concept artist because nobody's ever going to need me. I think that we're always going to need human artists.
I mean, I think if anything, eventually human art will become more special. Like, I think that's going to take some time, but at some point it will be more special.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that there's a huge topic about like, well, creating art, quote art with AI is not really even art. You're just typing in a prompt and that kind of stuff. And
I think that's ignorant.
well, I think again, like I go back to like things with a camera,
Mm-hmm.
I never took film photography. Or I never did film photography. I got in shortly after digital photography kind of became a thing. It was really kind of, at this point when I got into it, it was just better than film photography. And so, like, again, this is kind of a parallel to, I think, what we're going through now. Like, there's this better technology out, a digital camera, that I come up and pick up, and I'm not going to lie to you, it's way easier to take a photo nowadays than it used to be. Like, it used to be crazy hard to take a photo. Not just a good photo, but literally just to take a photo and get it exposed properly. Like, you really had to know what you were doing.
Yeah, just to interject for a second,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean, because even something as simple as when I started making YouTube videos, I had to go buy a camera. I didn't use my phone. My phone wouldn't take video. In fact, I think when I started YouTube, I don't know if I even had a phone yet, but I had to go buy a camera, and I had to have SD cards. I had to manage the batteries. I had to make sure I had good sound quality, all this stuff. And now my Google Pixel does what it did, but 1,000 times better, easier. The sound quality is automatically like decent. Like, even just in that realm, in 15 years has evolved drastically, let alone with the technology like AI.
Yeah. Yeah. So absolutely. Like nowadays you can 100% pick up a digital camera or a cell phone and take amazing photos with very little skill.
Yep.
And you can argue, and I think it's true, like maybe that does devalue photographers um to a certain degree. Like, I have to
I
be honest. Like you can now take a photo as good, technically as good as I can take a photo on your, you know, phone, as I used to be able to take on a $3,000 or $4,000 digital camera.
I
Um
think if I'm being honest, what it's going to do is it's going to start making people that are creative and passionate about it stand out a bit more. Because I feel like you with technology you have this ease of entry. Like as game development has gotten easier, more and more people are like, "Oh, I'm going to make a game." There are so many games on Steam that are absolute dog. Like,
yeah.
and I think what's going to end up happening is as games continue to get easier to make, and AI is going to make making games easier. Like, I need a 3D model. I can just type it in, and pretty soon I'm going to have a perfect mesh with a skeleton already on it, 3D model that I can animate. But all those people that are getting in it just to make garbage. I mean, look at the mobile app store. Look at how much garbage is on there. It's going to
Yeah.
make the ones that are truly passionate and good stand out even more. I'm not saying all that trash isn't a problem because it is. And I know it's a little bit different than the topic of whether or not AI is like a good thing or a bad thing or whatever. Also, sorry I cut you off. Am I good to keep going or
Yeah, no, please.
okay, just making sure because I was gonna kind of go on my short spiel because I agree with a lot of what you just said. I don't think anything in particular stuck out that like I disagree with. I would say there's definitely gonna be ups and downs with AI. I understand completely that one, jobs are going to be affected. Not being able to pay your bills, feed your family. No, if anyone thinks that that's not gonna happen, they're crazy. Some people are going to be destroyed for okay, maybe that's dramatic, but there's going to be people that are going through it because of this. You can't deny that. You can't ignore it. It is what it is. I think the only difference I have, and it maybe not with you, there's a lot of people that are like almost doomer about it, where it's like AI's here, everything's done, like we're
Yeah.
screwed. I'm not there. Maybe I will be eventually. Right now, I'm more. There are bad actors that are going to use AI.
Yeah. Well, that's the 30% of me that's like
Right.
I I am terrified.
But the good news is there are a gajillion more good actors. I'm not saying that means that the bad actors aren't going to be successful in certain ways. That's the reality. I don't know how they're going to use it. It could be really scary. I mean, imagine a bullet that is guided to perfection with AI in real time. Like, there's all kinds of things that could be very scary. Um, but there is a lot of good people in this world that are also going to be using the AI. And for the most part, when it comes to computer security, security is ahead of the hackers, for example. So if there's hacking and then there's security, security stays ahead. Barely, and sometimes it does fail, especially depending on how old it is or if a business is willing to pay to keep it upgraded. But for the most part, security is ahead. And I think we're gonna see that with AI as well. Particularly with game development. This is my stance. I made this stance a couple weeks ago, and I still feel pretty good about it. I think if you're an indie game developer and you don't have a lot of money, like me, like Hal. I know Nat's model can't raise her hand, but like Nat.
Yeah.
I think if you can't find that collaborator and you can't pay for the thing you need, I'm okay with it if it's used within reason. Like, I need this asset or that asset, or like, I tried this, I'm just struggling, I really would like to have this. I'm actually completely okay with it. I don't care at all, as long as the game is good. However, this is where I draw the line. If you are in a financial situation where hiring an employee or even just a contractor for a short amount of time to get that asset is completely within your budget, and you're just not doing it because you have the AI, you can go jump off a really tall diving board into a pool. Okay, I don't want to get canceled, but big,
He said into a pool, people. Okay.
yes. I didn't say if it was full or not. Big AAA I almost broke my own rule. Big publicly owned companies, if they start using AI, that is going to be the scummiest thing in the world, and we need to, at least at first, we need to, like, I don't want to say cancel, and I don't want to use the big word boycott, but I probably will not purchase things that are from big companies that use AI art, because for me, that's just scummy. Like, they had the financial ability to feed someone's family, and they didn't because they wanted their $1 billion bank account to be just a little bit more of a $1 billion bank account. And that drives me insane, personally.
Yeah. I think I think what I think part of the problem is disclosure.
Yes, that too.
And I think I think a lot of the problem is going to come through the fact that, like, you might not be able to tell like if stuff is AI or not. And I know, like, right now, a lot of people can tell, but I also think a lot of people that think that they can tell only think that they can tell if an image is an AI or something, because that image is recognizable, like, they have an extra finger or something. But I can tell you, and I'm sure you've looked at this, and I'm sure others have looked at this, like, there is some stuff out there now that I literally cannot tell. If I just saw it, I would not be able to tell it's an AI generated image. There's stuff that can be written now with Chat GPT that, like, never would have known that was written by Chat GPT. um
With
so yeah, I don't know. What do you think about, like, do you think every developer should disclose if they're using AI?
I mean, in a perfect world, yes. I think what needs to happen is legislation. Obviously, that's going to take a long time, and each country is going to take their own roundabout, long way getting to it. But I think there just needs to be legislation. I think it'll be eventually, I have a feeling it'll say, hey, this contains artificially generated assets, art, whatever. Maybe it's a movie script at the beginning. It's going to say, hey, this contains artificially intelligenced graphics or scripts. And I
Yeah,
have a feeling
AI
eventually,
voices, that kind of stuff.
yeah, and I have a feeling eventually it will be watermarked. Not all over, but at least, like, like, this contains dairy or whatever, but it'll be AI.
Yeah.
As of right now, like I said, yeah, in a perfect world, I wish. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think legislation is going to be very important for that. And I, I don't even want to get into, like, you know, how
Yeah,
old our regulators are and how they're not going to understand
they still
any
don't know
of
how
this
Facebook
stuff.
makes money. So,
Yeah.
but no,
Yeah.
not to ignore Nat. Nat isn't someone that's going to jump in, so I'm going to open the door for
Please,
her.
yes.
Has
Sorry.
anything, like, have you? No, you're fine. That's why I'm helping out here. Is there been anything that you hard disagree with, or anything that you really agree with, or anything you want to add?
Um, I was just there was something that Hal said that I was gonna bring up, like, my point on, but again, ADHD brain, it's out the window and 8 blocks down the street by now.
Yeah, that's why
Uh,
I'm taking notes. I got notes right here, baby. Listen, I learned from the last podcast. But anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
but as someone who is very young, like I am Gen Z compared to both of you, or Gen Z. Uh, and I have used AI to generate art for my game and to generate code for my game. I think it's important in how you go about using it, because if you're using it to, like you said, like as a billion-dollar company to create something just because you don't want to pay for it, that's scummy, you're trash, go away, no one wants you.
Right into that
But
pool.
if you're, yep, if you're like me, who is still developing skills and is still learning, and you use it as, hey, I have this idea. For example, recently I was like, hey, I want to do this with my code. I don't know if that's even possible. I just went to ChatGPT and I was like, hey, is this possible and how would you go about doing it? And it gave me its whole spiel of like, blah, 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 do this, that, and the other thing. But instead of just being like, okay, copy paste, it was more so, okay, how can I take this and adapt it towards what I'm working with? And I think that's really important is if you're going to use AI in any way, shape, or form, I think it has to be adapted by a human into what you need. You can't just keep redoing and redoing and redoing until you get that quote unquote perfect thing. You need a human to create that perfect product because that perfect product needs to be imperfect.
Yeah, I like how you put that, because the
Yeah.
more perfect something is, I mean, look at
It's almost
the
uncanny valley.
it is like, if you look, as soon as you said that, my first thought was like, imagine the most recent Call of Duties. That formula is so perfected, it's almost gross. I don't know if that, I know that's a random weird thing to say, like I'm using a descriptor like gross as over the whole game, but when I look at
No,
it, I'm
I
just
think that
like,
makes perfect sense.
it's so perfected, and just
It's
it's
so
this.
formulaic.
Yes, exactly. I'm just like, I don't care. Like, I don't like
Yeah.
it.
It's like a Marvel movie. It's like you know exactly what it's going to be.
Yes.
Um,
I've never
Yeah.
thought of it
yeah,
that way. I don't like Marvel
yeah,
movies, and I've never been able to put it into words, but I think what you're saying is right. It's like,
yeah,
yeah, of course that's what it is. I think
yeah.
perfect.
I think Martin Scorsese talked about this. That and you know, like if you like Marvel movies, that's fine.
Yeah.
I have nothing against you. I enjoyed my fair share of the Avengers movies and that kind of stuff, but I don't think that you cannot deny. Or wait, no, I don't think you can deny. There we go. That
There you go.
those movies very much like, especially the more they went on, they very much fit into a formula. Like they
Hmm.
found out how to do it a certain way, and they all just kind of are the same movies basically. One thing that I really liked about what Nat was saying, and I wanted to comment on, was I think this is actually a very good, or I kind of have a good analogy for this with me and photography, because I always loved art and I always wanted to be an artist when I was young, but I was never very good at drawing or painting, and I still am not good at it. And I always wanted to like make art and do art and that kind of stuff. And so I think that's why I was so drawn to photography, because personally I just found it easier. I found that I could have a piece of technology that I could hold and I could take a photo, and I could do that way better than I could draw. And so, in that way, this piece of technology allowed me to be an artist. And, you know, there's like so many kind of layers of that you could go through. Like, you know, you could say, like, Photoshop allows me to be an artist because there's no way that I can, you know, make this image look the way that I would want it to look, but I can take a photo of something and then I can go into Photoshop and manipulate it. And, you know, like, does that not make you an artist because you're using Photoshop, or does that not make you an artist because you're using a camera? And now I think you can say, like, does it not make you an artist because you're working with an AI image as a concept, or, you know, some kind of tool like that? Um, I don't think it does. I again, I still fully understand, like, there's a lot of complexities to this, and this is not a black and white issue, and there's like all the ethical concerns and
Well,
topics to go over.
I think what you're saying really lines up with what I was getting at earlier. Of it lowers the bar of entry, and a lot of people can do it.
Yeah.
I think regardless of the tools, because tools ultimately are usually used to save time. And just because you have ways to save time doesn't make you any less of an artist. I think it's going to come down again. Yes, more and more people can do these things, but the quality will always be in the hands of the people that are truly creative and passionate about it.
Yeah. Well, it goes back
not
to
to
the
Go ahead, sorry.
Uh, I was just gonna say I know I keep going to cameras, but like that's what I did for 13 years. But
Yeah,
it
yeah,
goes
yeah.
back to that. Like again, you used to be able to. There used to be a very small select number of photographers that could
Yep.
actually have a camera and do the whole thing with the film and flashes and all of that stuff. And now everyone has one of these things that they can go out and they can take a great photo. And I think that you can very easily go out and take a great photo with a phone and call yourself an artist now.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that's where I will leave it with that.
Yes, unless Nat has any final statements on it, because we should probably, for the sake of time, move on to the next segment.
If I can, I remembered what I was going to
Oh
say
yeah.
that when 8 blocks
Nice.
down the street turned around. Um, Hal had said something along the lines of like a lot of artists are just upset that people are just putting words like prompt in. But if you think about it, is that not what an artist does? Do they not just take a prompt that they've thought of themselves and use their skills to create it? It's very, in my eyes, there's almost no difference. Now, yes, someone using AI is, they're not necessarily putting effort forth, and I think that effort matters. But there's really no difference there between putting a prompt into a generator and creating something and thinking of something and creating it, because you're still both creating the concept
Yeah,
and you're
yeah.
still bringing
It's
it into existence.
it's the exact same thing of going to a painter and asking them to create a portrait for you, and them spending maybe hours making this beautiful portrait for you, and then me coming in with a cell phone taking a exact same portrait of that same person. Like that's way easier, but we still very much value that painter.
Oh,
And
100%.
yeah, and we still like, if there's an artist that wants to use a cell phone to create an image, then go for it. And so I think that again, it is still like a very complicated subject because
Oh, definitely.
like you were saying, that it's like all you're doing now is just typing in a prompt, and that does make things a little bit more, or a little less artistic maybe. um but I don't know, like it's still so new. I don't know, maybe that will just be more of an artistry thing in the future, is
I will
learning how to
say,
type in the prompt.
as a closing statement on this, I think we can easily just go back to, oh, what's it called? 8 something? 8, Exit 8?
Exit 8, yeah.
Yeah, we can go back to Exit 8. We have access to the same tools that person does,
Yeah,
but they were able to use those tools in a way that was better than we've achieved so far.
yeah.
And I think you can say the same thing about AI.
That's a really good point. And just like, even if AI could literally make a game from scratch, if I could just go into Unreal Engine, Chat GPT, and type in "make me this game," and it made a perfect game from scratch, you're still a long way from being a successful developer,
Oh yeah,
because
100%.
you have to market it, you have to figure out how to sell it, you have to figure out how to distribute it, you have to build a community, you have to figure out bugs and that kind of stuff. So even if we get to that point, like, there's still a lot of work and passion that has to go into making a game.
All right. So we are roughly 1 hour into the podcast. So we are going to we'll do like a couple questions here. I'm not going to give them specifically to Nat. I've just got some here and I will spread them around to all of us. We'll only do a couple just because we've already went pretty long. I knew catch up plus AI talk was going to dominate this one. Sorry, you probably just heard that was not your Steam, that was mine. Um,
I didn't even hear it.
well, you guys didn't. The podcast did, though.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. Let me pick a question here. Ooh. You already answered that. You know what? Perfect. Hal, I'm going to ask you this question, and I think you'll know why as soon as I ask it. What challenges and successes have you experienced while working in a collaborative setting?
Oh my goodness, what challenges and successes?
Yeah.
Man,
No
sometimes I
pressure.
really hate questions. I know, because I feel so pressured now.
By the way,
Um,
I'm someone that I can take anything, so I want you to be honest. If you're like, this sucked, I don't care. You got to tell me.
no, it's not even that, like, I'm just totally drawing a blank.
Okay, okay. If
And
you want me to move on to a different question, maybe we can like go to Nat with an easier question, and then we can come
yeah,
back.
give her
Okay.
the easier question.
She
Yeah.
is new and my wife, so I have to play it easy. All right, Nat. I think this will be pretty easy for you. What inspired you to become a game developer, and how did your journey begin?
Well, obviously, you as my husband, was a big part of it. Um, I think another big portion of it was just I am a person who, whenever I have an idea, I want to bring that into a reality. And I'm not the greatest at art. So creating something like that, I can't make a like manga or comic strip, to express a story. I'm not the greatest at writing, so I can't create like an actual book to express a story. But having the idea of like, hey, I can do multiple things, combine multiple talents together and form something that can convey this story is much more appealing to me, and it was one of the things that really got me interested in it at first. Because let's be honest, there's 8 million things that you do in StarCraft that I don't care about. But, you know, it, there's some things that do intrigue me and make me want to work harder and want to learn.
Right.
Oh God.
No, that's
Sorry, I'm
awesome.
sitting on Psyduck.
No, it's all good. How should I answer a question, or do you think you've got something?
Well, I'll go back to the collaboration thing. Um, I don't know if this is exactly what you're looking for, but I have lately been trying to just find. I won't even give like specific examples, but um, just finding people to work with in general has been very challenging. And you wouldn't think that that would be so hard because, like, there are, I mean, this is not a good thing, but there have been so many layoffs over the past year and a half or so. And there are so many new game developers. They're just graduating out of, college and university. You would think you would just be able to find like tons of people to work with and collaborate with and do that kind of stuff. But apparently I just don't know how to do that yet. I'm trying to, but
You're doing an amazing job. Like, this podcast technically exists because of your ability to collaborate. So, yes, it's difficult, and I could easily go on a 30-minute rant of professional versus indie developers, but you're
yeah.
doing a great job.
Um, I just want to say if there's any animators out there,
Real.
give me a shout out.
Yeah, that's
I really need some
indieallies.com.
animation help. Yep,
Listen, it was cute
indieallies.com
animation.
or howaboustudios.com. Um yeah. I desperately need some help with animations. But more than that, that's kind of like a side thing. I really wish it was easier to collaborate with people. And so that's actually one of the things that I've been working on that I didn't really talk about much. And I still have kind of a lot of work to do on this, but I really want to make it easier to find and collaborate with people. And so some of the steps I'm doing to take that or to make that happen is I'm working with some stuff with the indie allies, and I'm kind of combining this with How About Studios to basically just get the word out that, hey, I'm trying to kind of build a list of people, whether it's somebody if you just graduated or if you are somebody that was unfortunately laid off and you're looking for work. I want to kind of create a place that we can all kind of gather and throw our name in there and collaborate with each other, because I really think in today's world, like, we got to help each other out if we're going to be successful,
Yep.
because it is very, very, very hard to market a game by yourself and to be
Yep.
a solo game dev. Again, I'm going to go like really quickly back to my photography background. Starting a photography business was very, very hard, and there were a lot of challenges, but way easier to do by yourself. Um, because there's just not nearly as many moving parts. And you do still have to play a lot of different roles. Like any business, you have to be an accountant, and you have to be a marketer, and you have to be a business person, and all of that. But with game development, you have to do all of that. But then you also have to know how to program, and you have to know how to, uh, you know, do 2D art and 3D art and 3D models and animations and all that fun stuff. And it is tough. It is really tough to be a solo indie dev. So my advice would be don't, and let's work together.
Yes.
um
100%.
yeah, so I don't know if that's exactly what you were wanting for that answer, but
No, I
that's
think it
what I
was
got.
better than what I wanted. I I think my initial thought was you were going to be like, "Oh, finding people that are, reliable and like all the basic stuff you would imagine," but I think your answer was better.
Yeah.
He wanted you to roast him.
Kinda. You know what? I was like, "What's it like work with me?" Huh, 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 huh. No.
No, honestly, like my collaborations with you have been very good.
Oh, well, thank you. I agree though on your side as well. Like I think that's why we're here. I think that's why we're doing a podcast, is because things just I think everyone knows this feeling when you find somebody else that's dedicated to the craft that you're doing, so you're not like
Yeah.
worried about being flaky, you're not worried about them
Yeah.
lying.
I think that's what
So,
frustrates me so much is I don't know if it's just because like people aren't truly passionate. I think that might be. Like I think there's a lot of people that think that they want to be a game developer. And I also want to say, like, this is totally fine. I lived my entire life up until a couple of years ago thinking that I was passionate about photography.
mhm.
And I was passionate to a degree, but when I found and discovered game development, I was like, oh, this is passion.
Yeah.
And I think when you find that, like, it is just unlike anything else you've ever experienced. And so uh, I think there's just a lot of people out there that may not be as passionate as that, and that's okay. But I just wish I could find more people that were passionate.
Especially
And
animators at indieallies.com.
yes, but yeah. Anyway,
All right, let's
I
finish
will leave it
off
at that.
with one last question before we move on. And I'm going to give this question to Nat because I think it's interesting from the new dev perspective. Are there any lessons learned that you wish you knew when you started?
Mm, As someone who struggles with planning and not overthinking things, I think the biggest lesson I've learned was how to like how to plan but not overthink things, because if I start overthinking things, I get stressed, my work goes down, the quality is trash, and then I stop like I just stop and I freeze and nothing happens. But learning the lesson of taking the time to slow down and breathe and think things through has been really big. And like you've seen it, even recently, have I got to the point where I was ready to just stop and not work on it anymore. But I took that moment to breathe and relax and step away and came back the next day and bam, it was all finished. Like that entire
Yeah.
system was done.
Yeah. I think
So that's
something
really
that,
good.
sorry to interrupt. I
No, no, you're
think
good.
something that a lot more game devs need to learn is align with what you're saying. Like recently, someone in the Indie Allies Discord, not to call them out, like it's perfectly fine, but they came back to game dev, and the angle they were taking was, ugh, I took a month off. I'm awful, but I'm back. We're good. I'm back on the treadmill. And it's like, no, dude. That month off is absolutely necessary. The creative process is way more mentally straining than people even remotely understand, especially when you're learning something complicated like game dev at the same time. So being able to do like you're saying is, take a stop, take a breath, everything's fine. And if you got to take a break, come back. Like, I don't know why game devs have this weird, like, whip mentality of, I took a day off. Like, I'm trying to break that stereotype so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to kind of add on to what Nat was saying, I really like that. And um, I think for me, I had to kind of learn that too. I guess there's two things that I want to say about that. I feel like one of the things that I learned very early on, like the very first month that I started doing game development, and specifically with programming, is it is like a very mentally exhausting, especially when you are just starting out because it's very overwhelming. There's, I'm specifically talking talking about Unreal Engine blueprints, but I'm sure this can be um, very similar in, any coding language. But like, there are just so many different ways to do things. And I think one of my problems was kind of going down a route of like, I know this should work. I'm going to make this work. And instead, what I should have done is like, this is a way to do it. Let me maybe explore another way to do it. And then through that, I might find like a much easier way to do it. And then also just kind of what I was saying about it being so mentally exhausting. I would often, again, like that first month that I was doing this, I would just like really beat my head against the wall trying to figure out a solution for something. And I mean, I would spend, hours and hours into the late of night trying to figure it out. And I would just be completely exhausted mentally. And I would go to bed and then I would wake up and I would be like, oh, wait, I know how to do that. It's so simple. So I think it's very important to take breaks and not to work yourself too hard. I think everyone is different for this, but I personally find like I just can't really work on one thing for more than about 3 to 4 hours without taking a break. And I think that's probably pretty similar for a lot of people. Like if you really focus on something for 3 to 4 hours and then you keep going, I think you're really kind of getting diminishing returns past
You
that
are.
point.
You absolutely are. Not to get too scientific with it, but your subconscious is doing 99% of your brain power. Like literally your conscious mind is like doing 1%. So when you're working those 4 hours, a lot of your processing's being done. And these are just, by the way, these are just random numbers. I'm just trying to emphasize, a very small part of your brain is actually working on the thing for those 4 hours. The thing that, oh, well, welcome ZD Primal in your party of 13. We are in the middle of a podcast. Anyway, taking that break is actually huge like you were saying, you'll go to sleep, you'll wake up, and whenever you wake up, all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I know how to solve this.
Their eyes were upon us.
Oh my gosh, I just got the notification. Sorry. Anyway, I actually wasn't expecting it to go off. I have like all my notifications shut off, so I'm not sure why that went off. Sorry, podcast listeners. Yeah, no, when you sleep, your subconscious is now actually processing all that data. So yes, it's good to work for that 3 or 4 hours, especially if you've got the energy for it. But that time off, it's kind of like, have you ever heard when people talk about building muscle? Yes, lifting that weight and doing that like constant just like lifting is really good, but you have to stop and take a break because that's when the muscle builds. It's the same thing with problem solving, and a lot of people actually don't realize that. All right. However, I think we should move on here to kind of wrap up any closing thoughts we had. First off, that was the Q&A section. If you ever want to send us a question for us to you can send that to DarkslayerTV at gmail.com, or you can join the Indie Allies Discord at indieallies.com and submit your question there. That also goes for if you want to be a guest as well. Same places. However, this was an interesting conversation. I really enjoyed it. Any closing thoughts from you guys?
I don't think so. I think that was a really great discussion, though. Thank you so much to Nat for coming on super last minute and joining us.
I keep using my hands and like doing thumbs up and stuff, and I keep forgetting that I have my model up and no one can see that. Yeah, no problem. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, my head is empty right now. No thought. Brain gone.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. All of the raiders, I'm sorry, you showed up right as the podcast is ending. I am going to send you somewhere else, though, so stick around because I would love for you guys to be part of a raid that I send to like a good friend of mine. But thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. And I hope it only gets better from here on out. Storyteller, absolutely. But yeah, we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.